Podcasting is serious work. Sure, most of the time we're just having a conversation with someone or hearing stories. And yet, when it comes to the making of podcasts, the tasks that take you from an idea to actually publishing the episode, right? The recording, the editing, and then the promoting when it's all done. It's not always rainbows and unicorns. And even in some cases where podcasts are talking about very serious topics. I've worked on episodes that talk about food insecurity, war-torn countries, child abuse, trauma, relationship issues. There still can be joy when you're talking about serious issues and creating your show. The light and the joy that actually comes from sometimes being in these really dark spaces can brighten even more. I mean, to the lack of a whole cliche thing, you really need to be in the dark and to be in that seriousness, to really enjoy and know what it means to be appreciative of being in that light. So, podcasting is serious work. But like I always say, podcasting is meant to be fun. So, as we celebrate 100 episodes of this very show, I want us both to reflect on how much work podcasting really is. Through the struggle to complete and publish episodes, that struggle is real, and yet how there's actually so much joy that it can bring. Podcasting is serious work, yes, but it's also fun. So this is episode number 100, oh yeah, on the Podcaster's Guide to a Visible Voice.
So let's go.
Here we are, episode number 100. This is where you throw out that celebrating horns, confetti, right? I don't know. I'm not usually that type of a person. And numbers are just numbers. I mean, yes, 100 is a milestone, but I decided for this episode that I just want to be very grateful. Grateful that I've created this many episodes for this particular show, but that you are here with me today and finding a bit of joy in whatever you've been up to so far. And also by choosing to listen to this episode. So first of all, thank you. Thank you for being here. As I said on the top of the show, creating a podcast is not easy. And if you have a detailed checklist like I do, you can also see how much work it actually takes to get from idea to publish, and even more work after that with the promoting and then planning for the next episode. It's a never-ending spiral of stuff to do. One of the things I wanted to focus on for this episode was actually reflecting back on our whys. Why? Why are we doing this? So if you're not familiar, you'll always hear me talk about your why. That's the point of your podcast. Why do you want to create one? Because like I said, it's a lot of work, so you have to know why it should exist in your world. It's not a matter of if, but when you'll be overwhelmed or when you'll be burnt out. So knowing your why will bring you back to your joy and the joy of creating a podcast. I actually had this very conversation with a potential podcaster the other day. I was asking them about their goals for the podcast. And usually this is where I figure out if we're in alignment in how they think, what they want their podcast to do, and if I'm a good partner for that. And they talked about how they wanted to build a community. And I'm like, yep, bang on. Okay, this is it. It's not going to be about the numbers, right? It's not going to be about growing your listenership, which comes with it anyway, but she wanted to build a community. But the thing was, she works in the beauty industry, and usually all the beauty stuff, it's your typical physical side of things, right? Looking perfect. So all those stereotypes of the beauty industry. She wanted to showcase how the work she does is actually outside of all these stereotypes. What she does is really transformational and also restorative, because it's about the confidence within. I know, it's such a cliche, right? And in this case, it does kind of work because her work can also deal with cancer patients losing their hair and the struggle of not only dealing with the cancer diagnosis, but then also the journey of going through all the therapies and all of that. But in amongst that all, beauty comes into play, right? What happens when you no longer have hair and you lose that part of you? So, long story short, it's not about the beauty. So her podcast isn't really about that either. She has another why for her podcast and the work she does. As for myself, I've had these moments of overwhelm too. We're celebrating episode 100, so I'm walking down that memory lane, and I'm always glad that I have my breaks to set up what I do for this podcast and the joy it brings. So I know this is my last episode before my summer break. That was the plan. And actually, it just lucked out that it was episode 100. That was all serendipity right there. I can't wait to do all the summer adventures that we have lined up as a family. But to reflect on the past 100 episodes, I've had a very busy first part of the year. This year with work, new clients, lots of podcasts to listen to. There was voice coaching clients as well. And then also now setting up for the remainder of my year, having some speaking gigs. And there's lots of personal things too, right? Like work and personal stuff intertwines. You can't really separate the two. So I was caring for my mom. I was away from home and my family for a bit. But then also coming back and being with my kiddo with her very first events, like her first track meet, and for me to volunteer with her. I was so grateful to be able to do that. So with all of these responsibilities, there was always time to put the podcast on the back burner, right? You don't have to create the podcast. And all the things that you have to do, podcasting isn't high on that priority list that I was just talking about. But I want to keep it going because in knowing my joy and my why, it's because A, I know it's going to grow my business, right? It's a long-term marketing plan. And B, it's just really fun to do. And again, I only do things if it's fun, right? So if it stops being fun, I'm going to stop doing it. So we need to take a look at this reflection and to find our joy in podcasting. In creating a podcast, not just for me, but I see this in the clients that I work with too, we get to use our podcast platform to also work things out that I've been chatting with, the people in my lives, whether that is my clients or maybe it's my clients chatting with their clients. So it really is we are chatting with our listeners, right? We're trying to figure out what their challenges are so that on the podcast, we can actually work out some of these strategies and tips, or even playing through the ideas I have for an upcoming talk or workshop that I'll be facilitating. This can all be done through episodes of your podcast. And then there's also, if you have interviews, connecting with a larger community in podcasting and hearing from others, right? I interview other podcasters, so I'm creating that network and really getting new perspective from other people. And then another reason that my podcast exists is that I get to share very specific episodes with people who might need that support for a specific topic, right? Like I've had a client who's like, I don't know if I should be doing this or that. And honestly, she's so busy, she doesn't listen to every single episode of my podcast, right? Even though she's my client. So I was like, hey, listen to this episode. It's a solo, it's short, it's got some prompt questions for you. And you know what? It worked for her. So I love that they get to come back with this gratitude on what they learned and what they'll implement. So the podcast for me is more about connecting with my listener on a different level. And outside of my work, my business, personally, they also solidify friendships in my personal world who say they listen to some episodes and actually learn more about themselves and their voice, which was really surprising to me because I don't ever expect any of my friends or family to listen to my episodes. Yes, they're out in the public. Yes, anybody can get them, but I don't know. I'm just like, if it's, I didn't make it for them, right? You have your ideal listener, and my friends and family were not my ideal listeners. So it's just bonus points that they listen to it And they actually tell me that they like it. And they tell me why. So I know that they've actually listened to it because they'll mention something about the episode, right? So that's just a bonus points right there. So all in all to say that podcasting can, yeah, take up a lot of time, but that time is worth it because it goes beyond the podcast itself or your business if you have one attached. So what I want to do today with episode 100 to celebrate is that reflection piece. I've got some journal prompts for you if you are a journaling type like I am. Just walk through a few questions. And if you aren't a journaling type, let's just reflect quickly. You can just jot some notes down if you want to or not. But I just want you to start contemplating on some of these questions to help reflect and integrate the work that you do to make your podcast a success, whatever you define as success. All right, so here are my 5 questions to contemplate and journal on to really solidify what you've done with your podcast success so far. 1. What is your first memory when you were surprised someone mentioned your podcast? You know, it could be what I was mentioning before, where one of my friends, she listened to it and learned a lot, even though she works in forensics with the police department. Far from what my ideal listener is. But she listened, and she is still always a highlight for me as that first memory, and really surprised to hear that she listens to the podcast. It could also be like when I get discovery calls with potential clients and they say they listened to the most recent episode and love XYZ about it. And I was like, yes, that's exactly one of the reasons why I have the podcast. It's working. Yes. So for you, think about that first memory. What comes to mind? So make note of that. 2, what was recent? And recent could be last week, monthly, or even the last year or two, depending on how many episodes you release in a year. What was some recent positive feedback you received? This could be tied to the first question and probably be the same answer, but I challenge you to think of a different scenario. Feedback, of course, doesn't have to mean a review that you got online. It could be a private message, it could be from someone you know, it could be a DM, maybe an email you got, or maybe a comment from a group that you're in, or maybe you just had a coffee or tea with someone and they mentioned it to you in person. You know, real people in the moment. How novel these days, right? Real life people feedback. So take those all into consideration and figure out what was the most recent positive feedback that you received. 3, what have you done to celebrate your success? And I highlight the word celebrate because I know I am not one to celebrate, and I tend to go from task to task without recognizing all the hard work that goes into the projects, right? Sometimes it's like, yay, I did it! And then you move on and you do the next task. So, yay, I did it. But in this question, it's time to do something. And for me, what I'm going to do is during my vacation next week, I'm going to make sure I buy myself, and I might give my family, my daughter especially, a bite, but a slice of cake from a local bakery. Now, I'm calling this a celebration because it's something I normally don't do, right? So a celebration is something that is outside your comfort zone. I normally don't buy cake at a bakery, and I'm not talking about like grocery store bakery, I'm like a bakery, okay? We love baking in our house, so we like to bake non-fancy cake, usually a single layer, no frosting, lots of yumminess. So my version of that for celebrating is to take that cake idea, but bring in that celebrating layer by 1, buying cake from a real like bakery, and 2, making sure it's a fancy looking one, right? Probably more than 1 layer. See? It doesn't have to be complicated to celebrate, but it's about that intentional choice that you make. So what have you done to celebrate your success? Number 4, we are talking about those intentional choices. What decision did you recently make about your podcast? Again, recently can mean last week or even last year or two. That was a game changer. It could be something as simple as I stopped posting on social media and focused on my newsletter. Or something even bigger like I revamped my whole branding and recreated all my intros and outros and audio assets. Remember, I'm not judging you here. Whatever works for you to make your show more simplified and fulfilling and yes, fun for you to create, right? It doesn't matter what that is. What was that intentional choice that you made? I had a client once say to me, it was as simple as just hiring you. I'm like, I love that. Yes, I can make things simpler for you, creating that blueprint, doing the editing. It doesn't matter. It could also just be, having someone on your team to help you out with your process, right? So whatever works for your capacity to make this podcast experience more joyful and fun. So what was that intentional decision you made that you love? And finally, question number 5. Of all the episodes that you created, and if you have way too many to narrow down, maybe the episodes you just created within this past year, or if you do a series, maybe just this last series that you did, which one really lit you up? Like the one that lights you up the most thinking about it right now. It could be because it was so easy to edit, or that it was so personal for you, or that you just got so much feedback that you plan to make more episodes around that topic, really? It could be anything, right? What was it that lit you up about that episode and brings you joy? So that's my little walk down memory lane I wanted to do with you. I know we get so busy creating each and every episode, so especially if you have a weekly show, that overwhelm comes in, right? But we need to take that step back because if you just keep churning out the episodes, it almost seems like it's never ending. So thank you so much for taking the time with me today to reflect on the work that you've done with your podcast. These reflections really bring out the joy in the work that we do in podcasting, and it also helps you to keep going. It's a little incentive to dream a little bigger, to wonder when, not if, you'll feel those reactions again for the future episodes that you create. To remember that podcasting is fun, even if you touch on very serious subjects. It's not about the subject matter, but how you present it. So yeah, you can be very, very serious, but we can also bring the light and the joy. And through that process, you'll be able to speak with spirit, as I always say, and then create the feeling that you want your listener to feel. And since this actually is the last episode before my summer break, as I said, as part of question number 5, I did review my last few episodes. So the series I did from the beginning of this year in 2025 until now, episodes 90 through 99, 9 episodes to review. And the one that really stuck out in my mind, like that first thing that you look through it and you're like, ooh, that one. Episode 95 with Amanda Capito. It really brought me a lot of joy because she brought me out of my comfort zone. I was into this, AI is scary feeling. What is it going to do? But we really are in a time and place where companies are gathering a lot of information to train these AI platforms. And her idea that using AI to train voices that are more like you and me. So use AI, use it so they can train from your voice, your perspective, and not like the stereotypes and all the patriarchal stuff that we already see in our everyday, but more reflective of the greater population, right? Of everybody else that has a voice. So I was sharing this with the client as well, and she was also like, wow, I never even thought about it that way. You're right. The conversations I have are the conversations that AI needs to know about, that AI needs to be trained on because they are more intentional, they are more loving and with care, and that is something we need more in the world. So Amanda really not only changed my perspective, but hopefully your perspective as well when you listen to the episode. So I love that episode because of that, but also a personal joy as well. Like I said, you can't really separate the two, the work and the personal stuff. Amanda is just such a nice person. She also sent a book to my daughter. It's the kids' version of her Let's Talk podcasting book. And she got a glimpse, more of a glimpse into what I do for a living. So I love that. She will always remind me about the joy that she brought to my daughter. So that's it for this episode. Thank you again for celebrating episode 100 with me. Send me your notes from those 5 reflection questions. I would love to hear them. I want to celebrate together with you. So send me a voice note as usual. Go to my website, visiblevoicepodcast.com. You got the send voicemail purple button. Click on that and share your voice and speak with spirit. Email always works as well too, visiblevoicepodcast@gmail.com. And we'll get ready for episode 101 after I take my summer break, right? I don't have any plans yet for the rest of the year. I don't know what I'm going to be talking about when I come back in September, but that's why I have the summer. I am going to be figuring that out. I already have some things that I'm working with, but on that note about sharing your voice, send me a separate voice note on that too. What do you want to know? It could be something personal about me. It could be about my podcasting process, tech stuff, mics, recordings, voice stuff, anything. Let me know what you want to hear on the show. So yeah, voice note, send me an email. All those links will be in the show notes. So have a lovely summer break from me. Or if you are in the Southern Hemisphere, have a lovely winter break. And I'll talk to you again in September. Thank you so much for listening to the Podcaster's Guide to a Visible Voice. If you enjoyed this episode, I'd love it if you'd share it with a podcasting friend. And to reveal more voicing and podcasting tips, click on over to visiblevoicepodcast.com. Until next time. Let's go!